Commercial real estate or residential? The biggest culprit holding investors back is choosing the wrong property type and watching cash flow evaporate through vacancies, high expenses, or tenant issues.
Let's talk about some definitions here, like what's residential, because some people might think, well, I've got a 125 unit apartment complex. That's residential. It houses people. It's residential versus I think a lot of people think when they think commercial, it's like an office building or industrial or something like that. So how do we want to define that? Residential versus commercial?
Well, I mean, I think just go back to the definition, right? If it's residential housing for people, then you're over 5 units or greater is commercial real estate. I mean, that's the way I look at it, right? Like if it's 4 units or under, then that is residential.
People get confused because like they think residential, people live in there, right? So like we talk about mobile home parks, apartments, 5 units or above as commercial, and lenders typically 5 units or above consider that commercial. But there's other definitions in terms of like, hey, it's commercial real estate, meaning a business occupies your property, or residential real estate, humans occupy that for their housing.
Well, let's actually change it. Let's flip the script a little bit, because normally, 5 units or more is commercial, et cetera, et cetera. But let's talk about like the tenant type. Like, would we rather have humans as our tenants, or would we rather have businesses as our tenants? That's a great question. Most of, I would say 90% of what I have is humans that are, mobile home parks, apartment complexes that we're providing housing. So, but I know you have both.
Yeah, I have both. I have about 450 residential tenants, residential units, and I have a bunch of commercial properties too with large businesses as my tenant. I think they're both great. I have tenants that pay $550 a month in pad rent, and I have a tenant that does $5.7 billion a year in revenue. So it's like extreme ends of the spectrum, and they both are important. They both are great tenants. They both provide, income, and it's housing for one tenant and it's a business location for the other tenant. I think they both serve a purpose. I used to be really intimidated of commercial property. I used to be intimidated of having these commercial tenants because in my mind, I'm like, residential makes sense. Everyone needs housing. It's less risky. Like if I have this big building, this big property and the tenant vacates, there's huge expenses. And while there's some truth to that, my best performing properties are my commercial assets, my true triple net industrial buildings, my commercial property with a commercial tenant in it. I'm very thankful my mobile home parks have served me well. My small multifamily, my mixed use stuff has served me well too. So I don't know that I have a strong argument that one's better than the other. But in a lot of ways, I feel like commercial can be easier.
So I think that like it also depends. Like you've talked about your commercial properties, and the number one thing you talk about, which I love, is that you've really got to underwrite the tenant. And so like, in other words, somebody who's got a massive amount of investment into the property, it's manufacturing or whatever, right? And there's not a lot of change on the horizon, I think is different than like an office building in San Francisco. Like where they're like, well, they go under or they just want to work from home or go digital, and all of a sudden you have a vacancy. So it's like not all commercial property, I think, is equal. I know we have some people in Elite that are looking at like medical buildings, like dentistry, which is interesting because I don't think dentistry is going to go digital anytime soon. I don't think dentists are going to come to your house and do dentistry. Like I could see how dentistry stays around for a long time. Not to mention there's a lot of TI, tenant improvement. They've invested in these buildings. And so they have an investment into the building, even though they're just renting it. That's a different like profile than like, oh, here's a startup that's like, that sells SaaS software that could be taken out tomorrow. Like, so yes, the commercial side, I think, comes with those asterisks or like caveats where it's like underwrite the tenant, understand their longevity, how much have they invested into the property, that kind of stuff. And you've talked about that. Yeah, no,
I think that's a big piece of it. Like looking at my residential portfolio, my property managers are vetting the individual tenants. They're looking at their income. They're looking at their employment. They're looking at their credit score. They're looking at those things. Does this person have the ability to pay $550 a month in space rent? Does this person have the ability to pay $3,000 a month to rent this house? Yes or no? And my property managers really, they're the ones that take the lead on that. They approve these tenants or not. They do the background checks. They do the credit checks, all these things. But yeah, Mitch, to your point, it's exactly right. Like when I'm doing my due diligence on a commercial property, like a large industrial type deal, I'm looking at not just the property itself, but how strong is the tenant, how strong are the leases, and how strong are the tenant's financials? Because it's not just about the income that person makes. It's what is that business doing and how much infrastructure, like how much have they spent? Like a lot of my commercial tenants have put millions and millions of dollars into this building. And it makes them very sticky. And then do they have the financial capacity and ability to pay over a long period of time? So you're talking millions of dollars and sometimes billions of dollars in revenue and the ability to pay rent on these large spaces versus the property manager that's really just vetting the individual tenant who has the ability to pay, monthly rent. And one more thing I'll add is a lot of times when I'm telling people that I'm buying large commercial properties, it's odd, but a lot of people assume I'm buying vacant property. I have no idea why. And they go, how are you going to fill that unit? How are you going to fill that? I'm like, I'm not looking at vacant property. I'm looking at properties that have strong tenants in it. I'm still sticking to the fundamentals that we always talk about of how do I get this property to cash flow as much as possible. Right. So I'm buying properties with tenants in place and I'm negotiating price and terms of the deal. Sometimes I'm negotiating the actual lease prior to closing to make it a better deal. Right. Remember, deals are made, not found. And so there's aspects of commercial real estate like that. But overall, big picture, I want a property with a tenant already in there. I'm not trying to buy 100,000 square feet of empty industrial and hope appreciate it and hope to cash flow by finding some.
That'd be dumb.
That's such a different play.
Yeah.
Such a different play.
I used to think, I think I've probably come more your way, Gabe. I mean, on one end, I used to think, well, housing is less risky because it's a basic need and everybody needs it. And even if you have technology like AI and robotics and things that would take out a business, right? Those people still need to live. Then I would also argue that there's multiple levels of riskiness in housing. Like housing in certain blue states or communist and socialist states are tough because they take all your rights as a landlord away and they give it to the tenants, and they're actually damn near hostile to landlords. With housing in other markets in red states is a lot easier to operate. So I think I would like commercial businesses. As I move more towards maybe commercial businesses or commercial properties, I like stuff that's not going away, right? Like, yeah, you're right. If there's an accounting firm, and as an office building, or if they're a law firm, like, dude, AI is taking shit away. People are like, and I think there's a lot of marketing.
It's going to change the commercial landscape for sure.
Well, it's why I like, I have a lot of these industrial properties where they do have millions and millions into the infrastructure and into equipment. And I don't think those jobs are going away. So I do look at that. I don't own any strip malls, but I like commercial. And, I've looked at strip malls. I don't own any, but where the tenant, say you have 10 tenants in a small strip center, and these are nail salons and haircuts and a bar. Right now, those are places you have to physically show up to and go to. That's not going online yet. That's not going away yet. That's different than, like, I've watched people buy big box commercial real estate with a short, like 2 years left on the lease, and those tenants vacate and they have to repurpose that property. I think that's risky for most investors, especially like the average, new investor that wants to get into commercial. They go buy some big box store that 2 years later is gone and they can't renew that lease and they can't get a tenant in there. That's far riskier than the tenant that's super sticky because their industry is not going away, or you have to physically show up in order for that business to succeed.
But I'd also play devil's advocate there. Like, what if you have a large manufacturing plant and all of a sudden that business realizes that it makes more sense to fire half their people because they can put robotics in, or that industry gets completely annihilated? Like, you have tenants that build RVs. I love that because I think humans still want it's a cost-effective way to travel. I don't think that's going away. I mean, it's going to go up and down. I love medical. I don't, like you said, I don't think people are going to let a robot do surgery on them, or at least a robot that's not powered by a surgeon behind the controls, or dentistry. I get a little freaked out about large, and you have some large and massive spaces with like a single tenant. I get a little freaked out about that because I'm like, if I have a medical building or a medical plaza, I mean, it's already outfitted for as a dentist office or a surgery center or something like that. Like if someone goes out of business, you could then replace that pretty easily without a massive multi-million-dollar TI. So I don't know. It's a conscious stream of thought on like what I think's riskier in commercial, but I love the triple net model like you do. I don't pay for taxes if those go up. I pass it on to my tenants. I don't handle maintenance. And dude, that's like you're looking at a potential deal that's got 20+% cash on cash, dude. You don't find that in residential anymore. So
yeah, and I think it's good to play devil's advocate. You should look at the downside. You should look at the risk. I mean, I don't evaluate only the upside. I also look at the risk, right? And so it is, some of that is how strong is the tenant, how strong are their financials, and how strong are the leases. You can negotiate a personal guarantee. Some of these businesses that are doing millions and millions and even billions in revenue, oftentimes, their founders, their owners, you're going to ask for a personal guarantee. They're going to have a high net worth individual, running, owning the business. So there are things that you can put in place to mitigate that risk. There's going to be risk to real estate, residential or commercial, but there are things you can do to mitigate that risk. You can negotiate a longer lease. You can negotiate credits at closing and prepaid rents. You can negotiate personal guarantees. There's things you can put in place to make a good deal better and make a good deal a great deal.
Yeah, I just think that like you said, Gabe, there's a risk with every single real estate or every single real estate type, I should say. And I think the risk, unfortunately, is growing. And the reason I think that is I think that I don't think that we understand how AI is going to affect business or housing. And there could be risks as well as opportunities on the horizon, but business is going to change. Potentially the way we live is going to change. The cost of housing or the production of housing could change. So we're making assumptions on what's going to last through this or how things are going to look, but like AI could change a lot of things. I mean, if AI, for example, is able to produce housing at a tenth of the cost, what does that do to our mobile home parks? Does that help them or hurt them? Can we fill them up and rent them, or do people say no? Why would I live there when I can live in a house for the same cost as a trailer in a nice neighborhood? So could it hurt it? I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit, but I'm just saying, like, I think the AI wave is going to be something that could affect everybody, whether you own a business, a commercial building, or a residential property.
I agree. Although I won't let it, I think about that. I always think about what could disrupt real estate, residential or commercial, what could disrupt, how do I play good offense and keep buying solid real estate on solid fundamentals while protecting what I've already built? And we can't predict the future. And I don't think we know what the net result of technology, AI, robotics, all these things are going to do. Will it have an impact on real estate in some way, residential or commercial? Absolutely. But I will say, and you guys have heard me say this a million times, I'm always in a better position because I own real estate. I think there's going to be more opportunities for us that buy and hold real estate. With whatever changes are made, we will be in a better position because we own real estate. I do think about like, hey, what is coming? But I also look at how do I create opportunities for me today that I believe are going to, last. Like I look out 10 years. Do I think AI is going to take over manufacturing fully in 10 years? In some industries, sure. In other industries, probably not. Do I think robotics is going to take over housing, manufacturing? Absolutely, in some ways, but in a lot of ways not. And I still think that those that hold assets and own real estate will be in a better position long-term than those that don't.
Well, that statement that you're in a better spot for holding real estate has held true for literally hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. So I can't imagine that this technology, this revolution would change the validity of that statement. So I think that is true. And I think that if you go back to the fundamentals and you hold properties, make them pay for themselves, you protect yourself. But also understanding that you're in a game of risk and reward. And our job as entrepreneurs in real estate is to mitigate risk and to capture as much potential reward. Things are changing. But like you said, Gabe, like, also don't get caught up in it all to where you're like, oh, well, I got to wait to see what this thing does, or I'm too scared to make moves, because there's always going to be change on the horizon. Like it's just the way it goes.
Well, people look for we've said this before. I mean, it's a mindset thing. If people feel like real estate's risky and that's just their narrative, or if it's not a good idea, they're going to find anything online to back that narrative. If people feel like it's a good investment, you're going to maybe find people like us who love real estate and talk about it.
But I think a job is risky, right? Like I've said this for 20 years. Like I've always thought a job was risky because like Travis, you always say you're a line item on what do you always say? A line item on the expense report.
One income stream. But and so that what happened? What do you got? 800 income streams? We have hundreds and hundreds of income streams. Like that's a lot different than
jobs. Jobs do disappear. Industries disappear. They get taken over from, new innovation. And so it's like, if you only have one source of income, to me, that's really risky. And even if you have that one job and you spend the next 40 years working at that one job, like that's not the life I want. And that's not the life that a lot of people I know want to spend their entire life working every day for the same company. They retire when they're too old and to enjoy life and enjoy all the other things outside of work.
Well, and I think the last thing I'll put a bow on this conversation when it comes to residential versus commercial and and we're all about lifestyle, right? How do you have passive income? Not income that you have to work for, work your ass off for. And how do you build wealth through real estate? And if you go back to sort of like the different types of commercial versus residential, going back to our definition, which is how banks look at it, 5 units or more on residential or 4 units or smaller is residential. I like to control my destiny. And I think with the right type of assets, you can. Now, can I control my destiny with a mobile home park investment? Can I control the expenses a lot more these days in an apartment complex? Hell yeah. I'm renting dirt to somebody. I'm not subject to the whims of the cost of maintenance and labor and repairs and the trades, or am I doing development? I'm not at the whim of a 2x4 price or things like that. I'm also I like triple net, like your stuff, Gabe, because you can control the expenses. I know if insurance and taxes go through the roof, which they are in a lot of states, I can pass those on to my tenants. I love controlling that. I love the income approach on how properties are valued because I can control the profitability. If I can control the revenue, I control the expenses, I control what that property is going to be worth in 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years. And lastly, when it comes to residential, I like to have the control of my property. If I have a shitbag tenant that's changing locks and doing drugs in an apartment unit of mine, and they stop paying rent, and it takes me 3 fucking years to get rid of them, like in some states in this country, I've lost control now. So that's why if I'm going to buy residential property, I like to buy residential properties where I can control my tenant base. I can control the asset. I can control the upside, control the cash flow. So to me, it really comes down to what's the best asset class that A's positioned for the long term, whether it's commercial or residential, and what asset class gives me the most control. And I think that's the winner.
I agree. I love the concept of control. Building wealth and cash flow and freedom and equity and all those things should not be on accident. And in residential, 5 units or less, a lot of times happens by accident. You buy, you hold, you wish, you hope, versus the other, you're buying businesses, you're making them better. So
sometimes within real estate, though, we forget too. Like it's easy to forget. We talk about this with our elite mastermind members, and first of all, it's important to get around the right people and people that are actually doing and living what they preach. But also, I think it's more important to start, to get in, to buy something, because, and not to forget, not just the mindset piece of you have to want it. You have to have that strong desire and discipline and determination to go put deals together, but you also can't forget your why. I mean, when I met you guys, you talked a lot about the burning why. And that was a big part of the conversation with our early elite members is what's your burning why? And for many people, it was to quit a job or retire a spouse or spend time with family or to travel. And it's what I've seen, regardless of someone's circumstances early on in their life, and we used to interview a lot of real estate investors, and all of the successful real estate investors, a lot of them started from little to nothing, a lot of them. But every single person I've ever met that has been successful in real estate, they had that strong burning why. They had something that drove them to be successful because they wanted more time freedom. They wanted to spend more time with their family. They wanted to go travel. They wanted to give back. Whatever it was, their why was so strong. They let nothing stop them from getting into the game. The mindset was strong. They got educated and they took action to achieve those things that were actually really, really important to their life. So I don't actually think it's, real estate, commercial, residential, whatever. Like, get in the fucking game, take action, buy some assets to set yourself up and create the life that you truly, truly desire.
And then go buy a van and get down by the river. Be Mitch's neighbor.
That's right. And like you said, focus on your why. I think the money is not that important. I don't think money's almost worth chasing unless you have a why behind it. But when it fuels your why, now you have a reason. You have a really big reason to wake up in the morning and kick ass and go build wealth. So let's wrap it up, guys. What do you think?
I was going to say that's our first step for elites. Like, do not pass go until you figure out your why. Otherwise, you're going to quit when shit gets tough. But yes. Great episode, guys. I really pat ourselves on the back for that one. That was a good one.
Good job, guys. Great job.
Great job. I'm proud of both
All
of
right.
you.
Yeah. See you next week.